Uncle James, Princess Marianne's uncle, is a magician and a very bad man who wants to rid Rotundia of its princess. He thinks of a plan and gets the purple dragon to help him. However, Tom is of a different mind and has a plan of his own to rescue the princess from her uncle's clutches. Hello again, Sherlynn here, and I am so excited to read episode 2 of Uncle James or the Purple Stranger, which is the second book in the Book of Dragons by Edith Nesbit. So, shall we see what happens? Now you will remember that I told you there was one wicked person in Rotundia, and I cannot conceal from you any longer that this complete bad was the princess's Uncle James. Magicians are always bad, as you know from your fairy books, and some uncles are bad, as you see by the Babes in the Wood or the Norfolk tragedy. And one James at least was bad, as you have learned from your English history. And when anyone is a magician and is also an uncle and is named James as well, you need not expect anything nice from him. He is a threefold complete bad, and he will come to no good. Uncle James had long wanted to get rid of the princess and have the kingdom to himself. He did not like many things. A nice kingdom was almost the only thing he cared for, but he had never seen his way quite clearly, because everyone is so kind in Rotundia that wicked spells will not work there, but run off those blameless islanders like water off a duck's back. Now, however, Uncle James thought there might be a chance for him, because he knew now that there were two wicked people on the island who could stand by each other, himself and the dragon. He said nothing, but he exchanged a meaningful glance with the dragon, and everyone went home to tea, and no one had seen the meaningful glance except Tom. Tom went home and told his elephant all about it. The intelligent little creature listened carefully and then climbed from Tom's knee to the table on which stood an ornamental calendar that the princess had given Tom for a Christmas present. With its tiny trunk, the elephant pointed out a date, the 15th of August, the princess's birthday, and looked anxiously at its master. "What is it, Fido, good little elephant, then?" said Tom, and the sagacious animal repeated its former gesture. Then Tom understood. "Oh, something is to happen on her birthday? All right, I'll be on the lookout." And he was. At first, the people of Rotundia were quite pleased with the dragon, who lived by the pillar and fed himself from the bun trees. But by and by he began to wander. He would creep into the burrows made by the great rabbits, and excursionists sporting on the downs would see his long, tight, whip-like tail wiggling down a burrow and out of sight, and before they had time to say, "There he goes," his ugly purple head would come poking out from another rabbit hole, perhaps just behind them, or laugh softly to itself just in their ears. And the dragon's laugh was not a merry one. This sort of hide-and-seek amused people at first, but by and by it began to get on their nerves, and if you don't know what that means, ask Mother to tell you the next time you are playing blind man's bluff when she has a headache. Then the dragon got into the habit of cracking his tail as people crack whips, and this also got on the people's nerves. Then, too, little things began to be missed. And you know how unpleasant that is, even in a private school, and in a public kingdom it is, of course, much worse. The things that were missed were nothing much at first, a few little elephants, a hippopotamus or two, and some giraffes, and things like that. It was nothing much, as I say, but it made people feel uncomfortable. Then one day, a favorite rabbit of the princess's, called Frederick, mysteriously disappeared, and then came a terrible morning when the Mexican lapdog was missing. He had barked ever since the dragon came to the island, and people had grown quite used to the noise. So when his barking suddenly ceased, it woke everybody up, and they all went out to see what was the matter. And the lapdog was gone. A boy was sent to wake the army so that it might look for him, but the army was gone too. And now the people began to be frightened. Then Uncle James came out to the terrace of the palace, and he made the people a speech. He said, "Friends, fellow citizens, I cannot disguise from myself or from you that this purple dragon is a poor, penniless exile, a helpless alien in our midst, and besides, he is no end of a dragon." The people thought of the dragon's tail and said, "Hear, hear!" Uncle James went on, "Something has happened to a gentle and defenseless member of our community. We don't know what has happened." Everyone thought of the rabbit named Frederick and groaned. "The defenses of our country have been swallowed up," said Uncle James. Everyone thought of the poor army. "There is only one thing to be done." Uncle James was warming to his subject. "Could we ever forgive ourselves if by neglecting a simple precaution we lost more rabbits, or even perhaps our navy, our police, or our fire brigade? For I warn you that the purple dragon will respect nothing, however sacred." Everyone thought of themselves, and they said, "What is the simple precaution?" Then Uncle James said, "Tomorrow is the dragon's birthday. He is accustomed to have a present on his birthday. If he gets a nice present, he will be in a hurry to take it away and show it to his friends, and he will fly off and never come back." Oh, the crowd cheered wildly, and the princess from her balcony clapped her hands. "The present the dragon expects," said Uncle James cheerfully, "is rather an expensive one. But when we give, it should not be in a grudging spirit, especially to visitors. What the dragon wants is a princess. We have only one princess, it is true, but far be it from us to display a miserly temper at such a moment, and the gift is worthless that costs the giver nothing. Your readiness to give up your princess will only show how generous you are." The crowd began to cry, for they loved their princess, though they quite saw that their first duty was to be generous and give the poor dragon what it wanted. The princess began to cry, for she did not want to be anybody's birthday present, especially a purple dragon's. And Tom began to cry because he was so angry. He went straight home and told his little elephant, and the elephant cheered him up so much that presently the two grew quite absorbed in a top that the elephant was spinning with his little trunk. Early in the morning, Tom went to the palace. He looked out across the downs. There were hardly any rabbits playing there now. And then he gathered white roses and threw them at the princess's window till she woke up and looked out. "Come up and kiss me," she said. So Tom climbed up the white rose bush and kissed the princess through the window and said, "Many happy returns of the day." Then Marianne began to cry and said, "Oh, Tom, how can you, when you know quite well—" "Oh, don't," said Tom. "Why, Marianne, my precious, my princess, what do you think I should be doing while the dragon was getting his birthday present? Don't cry, my own little Marianne. Fido and I have arranged everything. You've only got to do as you are told." "Is that all?" said the princess. "Oh, that's easy. I've often done that." Then Tom told her what she was to do, and she kissed him again and again. "Oh, you dear, good, clever Tom," she said. "How glad I am that I gave you Fido. You two have saved me, you dears." The next morning Uncle James put on his best coat and hat, and the vest with the gold snakes on it. He was a magician, and he had a bright taste in vests, and he called with a cab to take the princess out. "Come, little birthday present," he said tenderly. "The dragon will be so pleased, and I'm glad to see you're not crying. You know, my child, we cannot begin too young to learn to think of the happiness of others rather than our own. I should not like my dear little niece to be selfish, or to wish to deny a trivial pleasure to a poor, sick dragon, far from his home and friends." The princess said she would try not to be selfish. Presently the cab drew up near the pillar, and there was the dragon, his ugly purple head shining in the sun, and his ugly purple mouth half open. Uncle James said, "Good morning, sir. We have brought you a small present for your birthday. We do not like to let such an anniversary go by without some suitable testimonial, especially to one who is a stranger in our midst. Our means are small, but our hearts are large. We have but one princess, but we give her freely. Do we not, my child?" The princess said she supposed so, and the dragon came a little nearer. Suddenly a voice cried, "Run!" And there was Tom, and he had brought the zoological guinea pig and a pair of Belgian hares with him. "Just to see fair," said Tom. Uncle James was furious. "What do you mean, sir," he cried, "by intruding on a state function with your common rabbits and things? Go away, naughty little boy, and play with them somewhere else." But while he was speaking, the rabbits had come up, one on each side of him, their great sides towering ever so high, and now they pressed Uncle James between them so that he was buried in their thick fur and almost choked. The princess, meantime, had run to the other side of the pillar and was peeping around it to see what was going on. A crowd had followed the cab out of the town. Now they reached the scene of the state function, and they all cried out, "Fair play! Fair play! We can't go back on our word like this. Give a thing and take a thing. Why, it's never done. Let the poor exiled dragon have his birthday present." And they tried to get at Tom, but the guinea pig stood in their way. "Yes," Tom cried, "fair play is a jewel, and your helpless exile shall have the princess, if he can catch her. Now then, Mary Ann." Mary Ann looked around the big pillar and called to the dragon, "Boo! You can't catch me!" and began to run as fast as ever she could, and the dragon ran after her. When the princess had run a half-mile, she stopped, dodged around a tree, and ran back to the pillar and around it, and the dragon after her. You see, he was so long, he could not turn as quickly as she could. Around and around the pillar ran the princess. The first time she ran around a long way from the pillar, and then nearer and nearer, with the dragon after her all the time, and he was so busy trying to catch her that he never noticed that Tom had tied the very end of his long, tight, whipcordy tail to the rock, so that the more the dragon ran around, the more times he twisted his tail around the pillar. It was exactly like winding a top, only the peg was the pillar and the dragon's tail was the string. And the magician was safe between the Belgian hares and couldn't see anything but darkness or do anything but choke. When the dragon was wound onto the pillar as much as he possibly could be, and as tight, like cotton on a reel, the princess stopped running, and though she had very little breath left, she managed to say, Yeah, who's won now? This annoyed the dragon so much that he put out all his strength, spread his great purple wings, and tried to fly at her. Of course, this pulled his tail, and pulled it very hard, so hard that as he pulled, the tail had to come, and the pillar had to come around with the tail, and the island had to come around with the pillar, and in another minute the tail was loose, and the island was spinning around exactly like a top. It spun so fast that everyone fell flat on their faces and held on tight to themselves because they felt something was going to happen. All but the magician, who was choking between the Belgian hares and felt nothing but fur and fury. And something did happen. The dragon had sent the kingdom of Rotundia spinning the way it ought to have gone at the beginning of the world. And as it spun around, all the animals began to change sizes. The guinea pigs got small, and the elephants got big, and the men and the women and the children would have changed sizes too if they had not had the sense to hold on to themselves very tight indeed, with both hands, which of course the animals could not be expected to know how to do. And the best of it was that when the small beasts got big and the big beasts got small, the dragon got small too, and fell at the princess's feet, a little crawling purple newt with wings. "Funny little thing," said the princess when she saw it. "I will take it for a birthday present." But while all the people were still on their faces, holding on tight to themselves, Uncle James, the magician, never thought of holding tight. He only thought of how to punish Belgian hares and the sons of gardeners. So when the big beasts grew small, he grew small with the other beasts. And the little purple dragon, when he fell at the princess's feet, saw there a very small magician named Uncle James. And the dragon took him because it wanted a birthday present. So now all the animals were new sizes, and at first it seemed very strange to everyone to have great lumbering elephants and tiny little dormouse. But they have gotten used to it now and think no more of it than we do. All this happened several years ago, and the other day I saw in the Rotundia Times an account of the wedding of the princess with Lord Thomas Gardiner, K.C.D. And I knew she could not have married anyone but Tom, so I suppose they made him a lord on purpose for the wedding. And K.C.D., of course, means clever conqueror of the dragon. If you think that is wrong, it is only because you don't know how they spell in Rotundia. The paper said that among the beautiful presents of the bridegroom to the bride was an enormous elephant on which the bridal pair made their wedding tour. This must have been Fido. You remember Tom promised to give him back to the princess when they were married? The Rotundia Times called the married couple the happy pair. It was clever of the paper to think of calling them that. It is such a pretty and novel expression, and I think it is truer than many of the things you see in papers, because you see, the princess and the gardener's son were so fond of each other, they could not help being happy. And besides, they had an elephant of their very own to ride on. If that is not enough to make people happy, I should like to know what is. Though, of course, I know there are some people who could not be happy unless they had a whale to sail on, and perhaps not even then. But they are greedy, grasping people, the kind who would take 4 helps of pudding, as likely as not, which neither Tom nor Mary Ann ever did. The end of Uncle James, or The Purple Stranger. I hope you enjoyed this short story from the Book of Dragons. So, until we meet again with another short story about a dragon, I bid you good day.